Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Britton Rife with the Northwest Energy Efficiency Council and the Smart Building Center, and we are happy that you're here to join us for our webinar on meeting water and energy savings goals in King County. So just a little background on NEEC, or the Northwest Energy Efficiency Council, for those of you who may not be familiar with us. We're a nonprofit trade association that's been around for a little over 20 years, and we work to advocate for energy efficiency policies, programs, and technologies. And this graphic here on the right showcases some of our programs and the impact that they have. Our physical office space is located in Seattle and Beacon Hill, and it's called the Smart Building Center. And out of that, we also run a nonprofit educational group called the Smart Building Center Education Program. So the Smart Building Center Education Program, or SBCEP for short, it has 3 pillars of activity that we operate under to achieve our mission of accelerating the adoption and commercialization of smart building technologies and practices. And so we do that by working to educate the building workforce of the future through demonstration of smart technologies and practices, and then connecting the industry through hosting events. Under the education and training side, we run the Building Operator Certification Program, which is a national program that we administer here in Seattle. Through the BOC, we also have a technical webinar series each year, which serves as continuing education opportunities for that audience. And then we have a YouTube channel where we share content from all of our educational events. And so that's where the recording from today's session will live after the webinar today, and I'll go ahead and share that link with everyone who attended afterward. We also have a tool lending library, which I'll talk about here in a little bit, that serves as a resource for loaning diagnostic tools for use in commercial and institutional buildings in Washington and Oregon. And then, as I mentioned, we also, our physical office space has a training room and large conference room that is available for industry use for meetings and trainings. We also host a Why Smart Buildings Executive Forum series and an annual Smart Buildings Exchange Conference. So these are some of the tools that are available for use in buildings in Washington and Oregon. You can browse our tool inventory at that link shown below. We have data loggers, power meters, lighting loggers, infrared cameras, and liquid and airflow measurement devices and more that you can check out for short-term rental. You can pick them up at our office at the Smart Building Center, or we can ship them to you. And yeah, this is just a great resource for building operators, engineers, and energy service professionals to do energy audits in their buildings. And so now I would like to introduce our speakers, and you'll have to excuse me because my slide control isn't working, so I have to pull up the bios manually here. Okay, so first we have Morgan Torres, who's the Executive Climate and Energy Program Manager at the Office of the King County Executive. She's going to share King County's new innovative financing program, CPACER, explaining how it can be used to invest in efficiency and resiliency measures to make buildings safer, more efficient, and less expensive to operate. And then next we'll hear from Erica Kino, who's the Research and Policy Project Manager for the Resource Recovery section of King County's Wastewater Treatment Division. She provides research and policy guidance, stakeholder and county council engagement, and oversees the King County Sewer Heat Recovery Program. Then we're going to hear from Natasha Bailey, who's the Commercial Water Conservation Program Manager for the Saving Water Partnership. She oversees rebate and technical assistance programs for indoor water conservation opportunities in non-residential buildings served by the Saving Water Partnership member utilities. And then finally, we'll hear from Ted Brown, who's an Energy Management Analyst Supervisor in Seattle City Light's Customer Energy Solutions Division. He supervises a team of EMAs responsible for developing and implementing commercial energy efficiency projects for the utility. Okay, so now I will hand it over to you.
Great, thanks, Britton. Welcome, everyone. I'm just going to provide a few short introductory remarks and then launch into CPACER. So for those of you who are joining from outside of King County, just wanted to share a little bit about our region to give you some context for the programs that we'll talk about today. We're located in Washington State, and King County includes the city of Seattle. So we have a mix of large metropolitan areas as well as some rural communities across our county. King County strives to be a leader on climate. We have very ambitious greenhouse gas reduction goals at the countywide scale, including to reduce greenhouse gases by 25% in this decade, and at the same time, reducing natural gas use also in the decade. Today, you'll hear about several innovative programs that commercial buildings can take advantage of to save on utility and operating costs, and also reducing environmental footprints to help us meet these ambitious targets. Next slide. So why do we care so much about the built environment? We are in a process right now of updating our greenhouse gas inventories, but as you can see in this pie chart, at last count, the built environment accounted for nearly half of the emissions in the region. So this is a really big deal if we're going to address the climate crisis. Next slide. This graphic shows how all of the programs that we're going to talk about today tie together. All of the components of the programs will help us meet these climate goals that I just talked about. Energy use being the single biggest driver of greenhouse gas emissions in the built environment. So we are seeking to make it easier for building owners to reduce their energy footprints. And although we're making really strong progress with building codes for new construction, adopting more and more stringent energy codes, we need additional tools to reach that existing built environment. And so that's what these programs are targeted at. You will also hear about programs to reduce water use today. Even though we see a lot of rain here, fresh water is becoming an increasingly scarce resource in the West. And water use in our buildings is additionally a big driver of greenhouse gas emissions in the region when we think about the facilities that it takes to treat, distribute, and collect all of the water. So to meet our emission goals, we also want to reduce water use. The first program that we're going to talk about is King County's CPACER program. Next slide. CPACER is a new financing tool for commercial building owners. Next slide. It stands for Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy and Resiliency. So this is a big mouthful. We call it CPACER. And we officially opened for application just a few weeks ago. Our King County Council unanimously adopted the CPACER ordinance in November, and we worked as fast as we could to get our program up and running. So we are now open. Next slide. All right, so what is CPACER? CPACER is a financing mechanism for energy efficiency, renewable energy, and resiliency in the state of Washington. It's a loan. It allows a building owner to install equipment that is permanently affixed to the building. So this could be mechanical equipment or other permanent improvements. The difference between a PACE loan and a traditional loan is the lien is attached to the property rather than the borrower. So, an individual or an investment group. It is recorded similar to a tax assessment, and it is a superior loan to all other loans and liens against the building except for property taxes. So to get a CPACER loan, you need to secure approval from any other lenders who are subordinated by the PACE loan. PACE loans typically have longer terms than conventional bank loans. They have smaller upfront capital requirements. Many of them require zero down, although this is negotiated between the building owner and the lender. King County does not get into any of the financing terms. The benefits of PACE, because of this structure, is that you can see lower payments, which improve cash flow as you balance out the savings from the utility efficiency against the cost of the loan. So as you stretch it out over a longer period of time, it can help those efficiency upgrades will just pay for the loan. And longer loan terms allow deeper energy retrofits that have longer payback. All right, next slide. Our CPACER program, you can see here some of the things that you can finance through CPACER. Our program is highly reflective of the county's climate priorities. We allow many of the same qualified improvements as most PACE programs across the country, but there are a few unique aspects of our program. So if you're familiar with PACE, these might be different from other programs that you've seen. We have that R at the end for resiliency, and that includes seismic retrofits, flood mitigation, stormwater management, wildfire and wind resistance, energy storage, microgrids, all sorts of things that can help protect buildings in emergencies. We also added a call out for electric vehicle charging infrastructure in our program as an allowable cost. And then over there on the right, you'll see that we disallowed any fossil fuel burning equipment. So we want to make sure that we are transitioning our built environment to as clean of energy sources as possible. Next slide. All right, so who can use CPACER? This is all eligible properties in King County, commercial buildings, agricultural facilities, industrial facilities, and multifamily real property that has 5 or more dwelling units. And this could be an individual property owner or an investment group. Next slide. CPACER covers a pretty wide range of qualified costs. This includes materials and labor for conducting the project. You can also finance fees for permitting and inspection, project application, third-party reviews. It's a pretty flexible program. We're really proud of kind of how much you can do with CPACER. I also want to call out the program includes a 3-year look-back policy, which means that projects that have been completed within 3 years can use this to refinance qualified improvements at better loan terms. Next slide. Also of note, we want to make sure that folks are aware that CPACER can be used to help property owners meet their new clean building performance standard requirements. So the clean building performance standards are administered by the Department of Commerce and apply to buildings over 50,000 square feet. Buildings have to come up to compliance with energy standards beginning in 2026. And the largest buildings are going to need to come into compliance first, phasing in smaller buildings over the subsequent years. CPACER is a tool that can help buildings pay to meet these compliance needs with upgrades. You can also couple CPACER loans with the state's early adopter incentive funds, which are grant funds through the Department of Commerce. The Department of Commerce has $75 million set aside for grant funds to help building owners meet these new requirements. Next slide. One resource that I want to call attention to if folks are interested in learning more about CPACER is our new building series or building video series, which launched yesterday. And it really helps explain some of the complex topics around CPACER. We recognize this is not an intuitive program, and we don't want that to pose a barrier for uptake. So we partnered with a nonprofit group called 2050 Project to develop this video series that really helps to boil down topics to be more understandable related to both CPACER and the Clean Building Performance Standard Early Adopter Incentive. These videos are available now on our CPACER website and can be easily shared if you want to help explain CPACER to colleagues or spread the word about the Early Adopter Incentive. Next slide. Finally, here are a couple of resources. As I mentioned, we have a program website that includes our program guide, application materials, the video series that I just mentioned, and then other basic program information. And you can contact us at cpacer@kingcounty.gov. Next slide. All right, well, thank you. I hope this was helpful, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Eric Aquino, in the King County Wastewater Treatment Division to talk about an innovative pilot program that you can actually use CPACER financing for.
Great. Thank you so much, Morgan. Yes, I'm Erica Kino, coming from a different part of King County government here, the Wastewater Treatment Division, to talk about sewer heat recovery, which is an innovative new renewable energy source for our community. Today, I just am going to briefly talk about what is sewer heat recovery, about our pilot program, some financing opportunities, and the status of our program. So jumping right in, the first question is often, how does sewer heat recovery help the environment? Next slide there, Britton, sorry. How does sewer heat recovery help the environment? It's just a fact that reclaiming wasted thermal energy is more efficient than any form of any energy generation. Thermal energy that's contained in the world sewers is an enormous untapped resource. I've read estimates that 90% of the energy that's used to heat water is flushed down the drain along with that water. And sewers worldwide have an average temperature year-round of about 65 degrees. The US Department of Energy estimates that there are 350 billion kilowatt hours that are discarded annually down our drains in the form of heated water. And then the final point here is just to note that when sewer heat is used for, the sewers are used as a resource for cooling, in addition to energy savings, you can save water as well. Next. So why would businesses be interested in sewer heat recovery? You can lower your property's carbon emissions and water use. You can use it to meet stringent energy codes. You can leverage green building efforts to attract tenants, buyers, and investors. And there could be financial incentives as well, such as CPACER, utility rebates, and potentially renewable energy credits. Next. So this is you can use sewer heat recovery for heating or cooling. And this is an example of a simple heating application. So on the left-hand side of the slide, you can see buildings. These are all the buildings that we have around us. They're discharging heat down their drains in the form of hot water from showers, dishwashing, commercial enterprise happening in those buildings. And then this is an example system showing how a building, in this case, the building on the right, can tap into that and aggregate that heat to heat their building. And as Morgan said, CPACER financing could be available for this kind of installation, and possibly electric utility rebates as well. Next. And then this is an example of a cooling application. As you can see, everything is really basically the same. It's just that the arrow to that participating user building on the right-hand side is reversed. So in this case, heat is being removed from the building and aggregated and then dumped into the sewer. And notably, you won't see a cooling tower on the top of that participating user building. So one benefit of using sewer heat recovery, the technology for cooling applications, is that when they replace cooling towers, which rely on water and heat evaporation, there can be significant savings in water use, as I mentioned a couple slides ago. So in addition to CPACER and electric utility rebates, it's also possible that you could qualify for water rebates if you are thinking about using sewer heat recovery to cool your building. Next. So this is a map of King County. The red and the green lines are our sewer interceptors, King County sewer interceptors. The red lines are the raw sewage that's coming into our system. The green line is a treated effluent line that's coming out of one of our treatment plants. You can use all of these pipes for sewer heat recovery, and it's the presence of these large pipes in dense areas, dense urban areas that have greater flows and more consistency in those flows. So for that reason, these King County interceptors may be best suited for sewer heat recovery as opposed to some of the smaller pipes that are around. If you are thinking about whether or not you'd like to explore sewer heat recovery at your property, probably some of your key factors are you're going to want to look at how close is your property to one of these pipes, and then what is the flow through the pipe in that location. And so there is an interactive map online at our website where you can zoom into your property, see if there's a pipe nearby, and then you can mouse over that pipe to see the approximate flow and energy potential at that point. And I'll show you that website at the end of my presentation. Next. And just noting that sewer heat recovery is a proven technology. It has been used to heat private buildings for years internationally in Canada and Europe and Japan. In the US, it's been used primarily by wastewater utilities to heat their own facilities. And in fact, King County Wastewater Treatment Division has been using it at our South Plant in Renton since 1988. So it's really a proven technology. And elsewhere in the US, we are now starting to see some examples of partnerships between the wastewater utilities and private users. In Denver, Colorado, the National Western Center campus is a good example of a really big and exciting project that's a partnership there. And King County really wanted to offer the opportunity for private property owners in our service area to use this proven technology. And King County's interest is really to share a currently wasted renewable energy source. And in so doing, we want to help our region lower our collective carbon emissions. So next slide, we started a King County Sewer Heat Recovery Pilot Program with some goals that are listed out here on the left-hand side. We wanted to help our community lower its carbon emissions, as I just said. We also wanted to provide a template contract up front that would provide potential users with the ability to see what the terms would be so that there would be transparency there and that they could make a quick decision, and hopefully we could sign an agreement quickly, because we know that the private sector, when you're going out and to build a building, you need to make some decisions pretty quickly about how you're going to, the systems you're going to use to heat and cool your buildings. The final goal was to give some reasonable compensation to ratepayers, because ultimately it's the ratepayers who are paying to heat that water, you know, in their homes and businesses and flushing that down the drain. So if we wanted to make sure that there was some payment back to the ratepayers, and for that reason, there's a small fee that's associated with the heat that's transferred into or out of the sewer system. On the right-hand side of this slide, you'll see our commitments with this pilot program. And first is that wastewater conveyance and treatment is our primary mission. We're not trying to become a new kind of utility. And so the user is responsible for bearing all the cost and all the risks to build and operate their system. And then our council limited us to 3 pilot projects at first to assess what that appropriate fee would be. And so we started this up in 2020. And next slide, this is my last slide. Just to note that we currently have 2 open slots in our pilot program. If you have questions about this program, I'm going to direct you to our website, which is listed here. And there we've got the user agreement, the application process materials, the interactive map that I mentioned, and more. So I am going to turn it over to Natasha next to talk about water savings and those utility rebates. Thank you.
There. My name is Natasha Bailey, and actually, if you can go back one slide real quick, Britton. I'm with Seattle Public Utilities, and today I'm going to be talking about the various water conservation rebates and technical assistance programs that are available to Saving Water Partnership customers. And I'm also going to touch on how these programs overlap with some of the other sustainable energy and financing programs that were discussed today. Before I start, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that the watersheds, in this case, the picture behind me, Cedar River watershed, and our region's drinking water system as a whole is located on the traditional land of the Muckleshoot, Duwamish, and Snoqualmie people, both past and present. Next slide. The Saving Water Partnership is a regional water conservation program that Seattle Public Utilities staff, like myself, administer on behalf of our retail customers and the customers of 18 other water utilities that purchase water from us. These member utilities collaborate in order to provide aligned water conservation programming for the whole Saving Water Partnership region. This map right here shows an overview of our current member utilities, including our newest Saving Water Partnership member, which is North Bend, located just east of Seattle. If you want to check if your building or project site falls in one of the Saving Water Partnership member utility areas, you can use the GIS map lookup tool on our Saving Water Partnership website. Next slide. The Saving Water Partnership offers a comprehensive set of programs for both businesses and residences. And today I'm going to be focusing on the programs that are most applicable to commercial, industrial, institutional, and multifamily buildings, but you can check out our website if you're interested in exploring our other programs. Next slide. At a high level, we offer rebates and we offer technical support services. Our most basic commercial program is our fixed rebate for ultra high efficiency toilets. Toilets are one of the easiest upgrades a building can make, and they often result in significant water savings. We also offer a commercial retrofit rebate and irrigation rebates, which offer a more customized financial incentive path for customers that are looking at completing water use efficiency retrofits in existing buildings or equipment or landscapes. And these rebate programs offer up to 50% of project costs for the installation of pre-approved equipment with demonstrated water savings. And then lastly, for those who don't know where to start or how to prioritize the projects in their building or facility, or are maybe looking for smaller behavioral or operation and maintenance changes that sometimes result in significant water savings, we offer a commercial water use assessment and also just general technical assistance. Next slide. If you take away one thing from my presentation today, let it be this. If you're looking at a project that could save water at your business or facility and you're interested in exploring rebates, please contact us early in the process. Our custom rebate incentive is based on a combination of modeled or actual water savings, the life of the measure, and the cost effectiveness of the project. And it's really a partnership between our program staff, our technical consultants, and your project team to make sure that the water savings for the project are well understood, well documented before approval can be provided. Next slide. One of the main reasons that we all came together today for this presentation is because the likelihood for overlap in the projects that are eligible for our various programs. So I just want to speak to a couple of these. First, I just want to say that if your project is going to be financed through the King County CPACER program, that will not impact the incentive determination for water conservation rebates. Second, I want to say that if you're considering sewer heat recovery technology in your building, know, as Erica said, that there's the potential for significant water savings and contact us early. And third, I just want to note, there's not a bullet on the slide here, but if your project results in both energy and water savings, it may be eligible for both utility rebates. There is a joint utility funding cap that does apply. Next slide. We'd love to hear about your water conservation project ideas. So please contact myself, Natasha Bailey, or our water conservation manager, Kelly O'Rourke, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have as you're kicking off this process. And I will now pass it to Ted Brown at Seattle City Light.
Great, thanks, Natasha. I'm going to provide just a quick overview of some of the energy efficiency opportunities and incentives that Seattle City Light offers that would relate more to CPACER and or sewer heat recovery. We've got a pretty broad suite of programs. We've been providing energy efficiency incentives for over 30 years for Seattle and the surrounding area. Next slide. Thanks. So you can see we provide electricity and incentives to customers from the county line, so up in Shoreline, all the way down to areas of SeaTac and Renton, as well as the city of Seattle. We have a pretty broad suite of offerings for commercial customers, multifamily building owners, and condo owners, as well as residential customers. We also have worked really hard over the last few years to diversify the types of channels and the ways that people can receive incentives from the utility. So we're offering direct incentives through distributors for lighting and HVAC equipment, through retail for our residential customers, as well as the traditional utility incentive mechanism where a customer engages with one of our energy management analysts on a project for lighting incentives or a custom project. You know, a participant in the CPACER or a sewer heat recovery program is most likely going to utilize kind of one of our more complex approaches, and similar to what Natasha said, it's the kind of thing where you want to get involved with us early and talk about your designs, your energy saving opportunities, and we can provide a pretty good estimate of what incentives may be available, and I'll cover some of those details in just a minute. But we have, whole building performance-based programs that are based on expected energy savings for the building. We often can use energy modeling for large construction projects, or we look at historical energy consumption patterns and use what's called whole building regression analysis to estimate energy savings once the projects are completed. We have new construction incentives for what are called substantial alterations, and some of those CPACER projects would probably fall into that category. And then we have some incentives for multifamily buildings, some of which are dedicated dollar per unit type incentives. And we'll talk a little bit about that. The sewer heat recovery, for example, I know there's one facility in downtown Seattle that's looking at the sewer heat recovery right now. We've already had some preliminary discussions with them about how their systems would be impacted and what energy savings would be available. So, again, that's a multi-year process for them to look at those designs, but getting us involved early is going to be important for those sorts of things, and we're really looking forward to those types of opportunities. Next slide. So a quick overview on our performance-based programs. These are, again, for the whole building energy savings, and we have offerings that deal primarily with operations and maintenance of existing equipment. So building commissioning, incentives for design above Seattle Energy Code for new construction, and then again for buildings that are potentially looking at CPACER upgrades or retrofits, especially if you're looking at a seismic retrofit where you have to do really substantial alterations of your building. That's a great time to look at the insulation, the windows, the actual envelope of the building, and we can provide incentives around that. We also have a program called Energy Efficiency as a Service, and that's a little bit different flavor of incentive program where we don't actually provide incentives, but provide some assistance and essentially serve as the transaction agent and help overcome split incentives. And again, that's something that's very targeted for large commercial buildings. Next slide. So just a quick overview of some of the new construction incentives. So heat pump water heating, and most of our incentives on a calculated basis are based, a cents per kilowatt hour or dollar per kilowatt hour. And so we've got, incentives based on insulation, windows, heat pump water heating, and again, that's above efficiencies required by Seattle Energy Code. Next slide. And again, for multifamily, again, here's a quick example of some of the incentives for, 58 cents a kilowatt hour for improvements to your envelope, which would include, better ceiling, better insulation, and then different types of incentives for more efficient clothes dryers, washers, dryers, and then some incentives on a whole building basis, depending on the type of, if you're building to BPA energy efficiency standard or a net zero energy standard in Washington. Next slide. And so just commercial retrofits. So again, if you're doing just a general building retrofit or some upgrades, most likely kind of with CPACER, with retrofit lighting, we've actually just increased our incentives for LED, for networked LED lighting fixtures this year. And again, we have custom incentives based on the energy savings, as well as some incentives like dollars per horsepower if you're doing an upgrade on your cooling towers, if you're still keeping a cooling tower, and some of the other equipment in the building. Next slide. And so the best way to find out, what program or what offerings we have that fit your project, contact one of our energy advisors, and we'll get an EMA to evaluate the incentive options that are based on your project plans. If you already have a pretty good sense of what you're doing and what your plans are, you can take a look at our energy efficiency tools and resources to get some insights on what our incentives there are for based on your project. But again, as Natasha said, when you're working with the utility, get us involved as early in the process as you can. At least with most of our incentives, if you've already ordered equipment, especially for large commercial upgrades, to maintain rebate eligibility, we've got to have some estimates of potential energy savings and incentives before you order that equipment. And that is all I have. So I will turn it back over to Britton.
Thanks, Ted, and thanks to all of you for presenting. Now we have some time for questions from the audience. I see we've had quite a few come in throughout the presentations there. Let me see. So this one is for Erica. Jeff was wondering if you can go into detail about why the second project that you talked about wasn't successful.
Yeah, we, as I said, we have 3 slots available in our pilot program. We have 1 project signed on. We thought we had a second project, but the owner of the building changed their mind. I know that the commercial real estate market is pretty, I don't know what volatile perhaps is the word, with COVID and a lot of different considerations going on. So it was a retrofit project and they just decided not to prioritize that at this time.
Makes sense. Thank you. Let's see. Just a couple of comments about how this is such a great opportunity and more people should embrace the technology. Okay, and then Ted, I think this one may have been for you. The person's wondering if substantial alterations for new constructions or remodels, if those are eligible for incentives, I believe is what the question means.
Yes, it depends a little bit on the definition of the project and what the energy code applies. So there's some language in the Seattle Energy Code and the Washington State Energy Code of when a remodel, if you're remodeling or retrofitting part of your building, if that triggers what's called a substantial alteration that requires building systems to be brought up to the current energy code. And so it's always something we end up tap dancing around, and owners are tap dancing around trying to determine whether or not their retrofit project would trigger substantial alterations. And sometimes, it becomes a bit of a deterrent on some projects where a customer doesn't want to go down a path that would cause them to have to do substantial alterations or trigger Seattle Energy Code because it would be too costly for them at that point, which in some areas, that's where CPACER can really assist, where you want to make changes to the building that might trigger that substantial alterations, but being able to activate or utilize a different financing mechanism may make that more attractive over the long term, where in the past that may not have been the case.
Great, thank you, Ted. Okay, we've still got some more good questions coming in here. This is just another basic one about why does Seattle City Light incentivize energy efficiency?
Historically, we've done that to reduce the overhead or the need for expansion for additional generation facilities, transmission, distribution. I think over the last 30 years, we've essentially reduced the need for about 10% of our generation facilities. And City Light is actually a utility that is long on generation. So for our customers, that means we have more power to sell on the open market, and it's a good investment for us to be able to maintain more flexibility.
Great. Okay, Erica, this is a question for you. How many sewer energy recovery projects have been done in King County, and how much in rebated money, if you know?
Yeah, in terms of privately owned projects, we don't have any that are constructed and operating yet. We just started our pilot program and opened our doors for business in 2020. So we've got 1 project signed on, and so the answer is at this moment 0 privately owned projects and 0 rebated. So I look forward to being able to answer that question in a few years.
Great. Okay, so and then this next one is probably for both you, Erica and Ted. If cooling load is done through sewer heat recovery, replacing the cooling towers, would this qualify for Seattle City Light rebates?
So the Seattle City Light rebates, when you replace a cooling tower with sewer heat recovery, for sure you're going to have water savings. So you would definitely want to talk to Natasha and her group about that potential for water savings. And then depending on how the project is designed, you may potentially also be saving energy. And in that case, I would think that's when you'd want to go and talk to Ted Brown, and I will turn it to him.
The answer to that is most likely yes. I mean, the cooling tower has a fan or fans that use quite a bit of energy. I think most of the cooling towers I've seen are, 25, 50, 75 horsepower fans or up. So the amount of energy it takes to pump a fluid around is probably significantly less than the amount of energy that's going through the fans. I mean, you already have to pump the fluid to get it to the cooling tower. So there's already pumping energy involved. So that, we can't say categorically yes, but most likely yes, there's energy savings from the fans.
Great, thank you both. Morgan, this one's for you. Is there a minimum loan size required by CPACER?
No, there's no minimum. I will say that because CPACER requires a lien to be recorded by the county, it is a little bit more complex than a traditional loan. And so typically lenders are looking at larger projects, but the program has no requirement for a minimum.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. Okay, here's one, I guess for anyone who wants to take it. Do I understand that Seattle does not yet require net zero buildings for new construction? What were the reasons that this was not set as a code requirement? It's kind of a tricky one.
We don't have any code folks on the call. I was hoping that Dwayne Johnlin from the city would be on. So.
I concur with that. I'm not sure where that went, but yeah, Dwayne Johnlin would be the person to contact about that.
Okay. What is the current interest rate for CPACER?
That's determined by the lender.
Okay. Okay, let's see. Okay, how about as a utility employee, do you have any recommendations for how to promote this program to our customers? I assume the sewer heat recovery.
This is a really good question. I think that probably we could do a lot more to cross-pollinate our websites and link, provide links. Yeah, for my part, I would like to do a little bit better job of creating links on our page that direct people out to the CPACER financing, water and utility energy rebates, just so that folks aren't considering their choices in isolation. There's lots of synergies there, yeah.
Great. Okay, Morgan, is there a list of pre-approved or experienced CPACER lenders?
We do not have a pre-approved list in King County. Some programs do this, and you can find PACE lenders through national organizations like PACE Nation. But we have decided at this point not to promote specific lenders just because we don't really want to play a part in financing.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. And then there's a clarification that the question about promoting the program was for CPACER. So if you have anything to add there, I'll let you. Sure.
Well, I would say probably the best way is to share out our new video series that I mentioned, which will be rolling out. Both it's already available on our website. There's YouTube links, kingcounty.gov/PACE. And then also our nonprofit partner 2050 project will be promoting the videos on social media, such as Instagram, starting a little bit later this week. So that's probably going to be the most understandable way for most folks to digest CPACER. But our website also has some pretty good visual resources as well.
Great, thank you. And then another one about CPACER. Does King County CPACER have any project performance requirements, or is that left up to the parties to decide?
There are project performance requirements laid out in our program guide, so I would urge you to take a look at that. It's at the bottom of our website, along with the application materials.
Great, thank you. Okay, and then another one on sewer heat recovery. When does King County anticipate to expand past the initial 3 pilot projects?
That's a great question. Thank you. Yes, when we brought this initiative to our King County Council, they were they had concerns or questions, I should say, really about what is the appropriate amount to charge for the energy that is transferred into or out of the sewer. So that is the primary reason that they limited us to 3 projects. And their idea, I believe, was to have 3 projects operating and to be able to have some data sharing with each of our users about their total cost for their project in terms of both building the system and operating and maintaining it in the context of that energy transfer, which is what we're calling it, to see if that was an appropriate rate. And when the council felt satisfied that we had an appropriate rate, and if everything else had been going well, that there was potential to open it up to additional projects, or at least to the policy discussion at the council level for that.
Great, thank you, Erica. Okay, let's see, another CPACER question. Is CPACER available for new construction projects as well as retrofit construction?
Both.
Perfect.
Yeah, we're very excited to be able to offer this for retrofits. As I mentioned, the existing built environment it's a really tough nut to crack because it's already built, right? And so we definitely encourage for retrofits as well as new construction.
Thank you. Okay, and as we mentioned earlier in the webinar, we are recording this, and I will get a link posted on our YouTube channel that I'll send out to all the attendees along with a copy of the slide deck. Let's see. Okay, there was a question about does King County, Seattle City Light, PSC, et cetera, foresee actively promoting this technology to their own customers in the future, right? I assume the sewer heat recovery. I don't know if you all have insight there.
Yeah, we're already, discussing it when it's, especially with a building that looks like it's, near one of the interceptor lines that's coming to us and just discussing, large scale energy retrofits. That certainly it's an option to look at.
Great. All right, that is, let's see. Okay. Is there concern that using sewer water to cool buildings would mean higher discharge temperatures or more energy at the treatment phase to lower temperature to meet permit requirements?
Yes, that's a great question. Thank you for that. This comes up a lot. What we find is that in the context of the vastness of our system and the relatively small amount that of heat that a building might discharge into a system, probably one system is really going to just be a drop in the bucket and wouldn't raise the temperature enough to pose a problem for our treatment processes. However, if everybody was to come online and start doing this, that is the potential. And so we would, as we go along and hopefully get more projects on board, we would be looking at on a case-by-case basis to project out what those temperatures might be. And yes, in theory, there is a point where the system gets too hot or too cold, and that inhibits the bacterial activity that we need at our treatment plants to treat our sewage, which is of course our primary mission. So yeah, thank you for the question.
Thank you, Erica. All right, that is all of the questions I see for now, but I'll keep an eye out just in case any others are submitted here. How can local water saving and sewer heat recovery experts get involved with building owners interested in the technology? That's a good question.
Yeah, this is really a kind of a market exploration question, isn't it? I would love to see more water saving and sewer heat recovery experts get involved with local business owners who are interested in the technology. I hope you guys can find a way to connect. As a government, we can be kind of limited. But when I do talk with people on a case-to-case basis, I'm always happy to share resources as I'm able, and I'm sure that's true with everyone on this call.
And I'll add to that I think there is some differences in the audiences that say come to the Saving Water Partnership and those that go to Erica. And so a big part of what's happening right now is our developing a stronger relationship so that as we are each individually dealing with or working with customers who are interested in these technologies, we can share those contacts between King County and Seattle Public Utilities and Seattle City Light. So.
Right. And I would add on, there's local trade associations for building owners and operators to be involved in with those groups, as well as the larger, real estate companies that are looking nationwide at, ownership groups that own and operate the buildings that are in Seattle. That would be the ones that would be looking at this technology and trying to incorporate that into their sustainability goals.
Great. Thank you all. And to that point, I'll add that NEEC and the Smart Building Center will continue to make information available like this type of info session to try to help spread the word about these types of technologies and incentives that are available. All right. Don't see any more questions. Oh, go ahead. Is someone going to add something else?
I was going to add something on that last question, just since we have a couple minutes. I was going to note that an independent consultant did look at conceptual applications of sewer heat recovery in King County and created a white paper that King County isn't responsible for or doesn't endorse, but it is posted on our website as a resource in that spirit. And it shows that sewer heat recovery has the potential to lower energy costs for building owners between 29 and 45%, to lower carbon emission reduction between 34% and 71%, depending on building type. And then for the cooling applications, that annual water consumption reduction could be up to 985,000 gallons of potable water per year. So that's just one example of how the private sector is doing some studies and informing this conversation, making these connections. So again, I'd refer you to our website if you want to take a look at that. There's a link there.
Great, thank you, Erica. Those are some fantastic savings. Okay, just another comment about the higher temperatures and needing to keep an eye on that. All right. If any of my panelists have anything else to add, I'll let you do so. Otherwise, I can go ahead and close us out a little early and make sure there aren't any other questions that come in here in the next minute or so. Let's see, I wanted to go ahead and share our contact information one more time. All of our email addresses are there, and then again, we'll be sharing the recording and the slides that have additional web links and resources for you to find additional information and reach out to any of us. So thank you to everyone who attended and submitted questions. And thank you, Natasha, Ted, Erica, and Morgan for joining us and presenting for us today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah, appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you all. That will conclude today's webinar.
Thanks.